The CEO's son thought he owned the company. He didn't, but no one told him that. They just nodded, smiled, agreed, and watched him destroy everything, including me. The day he said, "You're replaceable," I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply erased his name from the charter. And 3 months later, he wasn't just replaceable. He was gone. I worked at Ardent Capital for 8 years, investment strategy division, quiet role, big responsibilities. We managed high-risk acquisition projects, sensitive deals, private equity restructuring, the kind of work where mistakes cost millions. I wasn't flashy, but I was precise. The CEO, Richard Helston, built the firm from nothing. Strategic. His only weakness? His son. Ethan Halston, 28 years old, Harvard MBA, zero real experience. But he had the title, Executive Director of Strategic Growth, a title invented for him. And suddenly I was reporting to him. The first time Ethan walked into our division meeting, he didn't introduce himself. He sat at the head of the table, looked around, and said, "Let's modernize this dinosaur operation." Dinosaur operation. That dinosaur operation had generated $240 million in profit last year. But we clapped politely, because he was the CEO's son. At first, I tried to help him. I sent him reports, briefed him before investor calls, explained risk exposure in simple terms. He nodded during private meetings, then in public, he claimed the ideas. And slowly he began changing things. Aggressive acquisitions, leverage positions, ignoring due diligence timelines. I warned him once. "These numbers are inflated," I said quietly after a meeting. He leaned back in his chair. "Relax," he said. "I don't need fear-based leadership." Fear-based leadership. That's what he called risk management. 2 months later, one of his rushed acquisitions underperformed. Badly. He blamed market conditions, then blamed our analytics team, then blamed me, in front of the board. "This division lacks agility," he said calmly. "Maybe we need fresh leadership." The room went silent. I had built that division. But no one defended me. Because no one challenges the CEO's son. After the meeting, I walked into his office, closed the door. "You're making high-risk moves without compliance review," I said. He smiled. "You're replaceable." That word again. Replaceable. I nodded slowly. Of course. And that's when I opened the charter. Every major acquisition project at Ardent required board-approved charter documentation, risk oversight signatures, compliance checkpoints, authority matrix, and I was the architect of that system. Years ago, I built the internal governance framework. Every executive authority level, every signature path, every approval hierarchy, including Ethan's. You see, Ethan's title gave him visibility. But his authority was conditional. And those benchmarks were failing. I didn't scream. I didn't expose him. I did something quieter. I scheduled a governance review, quarterly compliance audit, routine, boring, safe. The board trusted me with these. During the review, I presented numbers. Acquisition volatility, missed due diligence checkpoints, margin compression, nothing emotional, just data. Then I asked one question. Are we comfortable maintaining current executive authorization levels, given performance deviations? Silence. Board members exchanged glances. Richard, the CEO, looked at Ethan. Ethan shifted in his seat. It's short-term fluctuation, he said confidently. I nodded. However, Charter Clause 4B allows temporary authority adjustment pending stability. Richard frowned slightly. He didn't remember that clause, because I wrote it, years ago, to protect the firm from concentrated risk. The board voted, temporary review of executive authority. That meant Ethan's independent acquisition sign-off power was suspended. Technically, quietly, officially. He didn't realize the impact at first, until he tried to approve another deal, and compliance rejected it. He stormed into my office. "What did you do?" I looked up calmly. "Governance review." "You undermined me." "I protected the firm." He stared at me. "You think my father will let this stand?" I held eye contact. "Your father signed the charter." That's when he understood. He wasn't erased emotionally, he was erased structurally. No announcement, no scandal, just reduced authority. Over the next month, something interesting happened. Performance stabilized, risk exposure decreased, investors relaxed, board confidence returned. And Ethan? He became symbolic. Title without teeth. But here's the twist. I wasn't trying to remove him. I was testing him. Because leadership isn't about power. It's about response under pressure. Ethan had a choice. Learn, adapt, or escalate. He chose escalation. He convinced his father that I was overstepping, that I was consolidating control. Richard called me into his office. Long silence. Then he asked one question. "Did you engineer this?" I didn't lie. I engineered protection mechanisms years ago. He watched me carefully. "And you used them against my son." "I used them for the company." Silence stretched. Then he said something unexpected. "Do you think he's capable?" I paused. Careful answer. "But not like this." Richard leaned back. "He's been handed power his whole life." I nodded. "And power without resistance creates weakness." That night, something changed. A private board session was called. I wasn't present. Ethan wasn't either. The following week, an internal memo circulated. Executive restructuring. Ethan would transition to a rotational leadership development track. Operational oversight suspended, pending review. Corporate language. But the meaning was clear. He was removed from decision power. Not fired, repositioned. Publicly framed as strategic growth exposure. Privately, it was accountability. 3 months later, quarterly earnings exceeded projections. Stability returned. Investor confidence surged. One evening, Ethan showed up at my office. No anger this time, no arrogance. Quietly. "You didn't have to destroy me," he said. I shook my head. "I didn't." He looked confused. "I erased your authority," I said calmly. "Not your future." Silence. Then he asked quietly, "Why?" I answered honestly, "Because one day, this will be yours. And if you inherit it weak, you'll lose it." He didn't respond immediately, but something in his posture changed. Less entitlement, more awareness. Months passed. He worked through compliance teams, sat with analysts, learned valuation models. Slowly, quietly. And here's the final twist. A year later, Richard announced retirement. Board vote for new CEO. Many assumed it would be Ethan automatically, but governance charter required performance review, benchmark evaluation, board approval. Same charter, same protections. And this time, Ethan passed, not because he was the CEO's son, but because he had earned it. During his acceptance speech, he said something unexpected. Leadership isn't inherited. It's tested. His eyes briefly met mine. And sometimes, he added, the person who limits your power is the one protecting your future. Applause filled the room. Afterward, he approached me. "You could have ended me," he said quietly. I smiled slightly. "I erased you from the charter." He nodded. "But not from the company." Exactly, because revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's correction. He thought he owned the firm. He thought I was replaceable. But power built on ego collapses. Power built on structure lasts. And the day he called me replaceable was the day I rewrote his authority. not to end him, but to make sure the company survived him.